We're live. Maybe. Let's see. It's spinning. I don't know what that means.
We're gonna find out here in a moment.
So, there it is.
There we go.
There we go. Look at
Yeah.
that. Live. And we have data and shit. Cool. All right.
There we go.
Hi.
What's up?
Welcome to a day drinking discussion. Normally, I've been hosting these as pre-recorded videos of me ranting like a crazy person from this couch on
Like
YouTube.
a crazy person is the operative word.
Right. Resembling a crazy
Yeah.
person. So today, I decided it'd be fun to do it live. I've been repeatedly harassed by my good friend David McDaniel to do a live video and bring him in for something. And we keep coming back to some topics whenever we get together and have beers and bullshit about civics and goings on. So we decided that we would bring those in here. So this will be posted later. If you end up watching it on YouTube, it was live once upon a time. And anybody that pops in and sees us, great. Otherwise, we're going to just talk about the topics. So if you have a question or a comment or whatever, then feel free to throw it in. Typically, if you've ever hung out with us when we talk about this shit, I'm the fist in the air, just this side of like some kind of olive drab coat with lots of fake medals, some sort of weird socialist revolution south of the equator. And David's usually the more reasonable voice of academics and legalities. I do joke with people that he's my consigliere, and he serves that role more than he really wants to for more than one friend.
Yeah.
So welcome to the fray. Today we're going to discuss cops in the context of where we are now, culturally, and a little bit about schools, because my kid starts remote school tomorrow, and schools are a topic among all the other garbage that's going on in life at the moment for everyone. So, welcome aboard. Feel free to give a brief intro for those that don't know you.
So, for anyone who doesn't know me, like you said, my name's David. So my background is in economics and law. I do a lot of different jobs. But no, I mean, I have a very strange path to how I've come to all these things, which is I actually began working for the Republican Party, and worked in the U.S. Senate for the Republican Party, and then I grew a conscience. Sorry, right? It's very much like that Little Britain skit where they're looking at each other's hats and being like, "There's skulls in our hats. Are we the baddies?" yeah, we're the baddies. We are in fact the bad guys. So I have been doing a lot of stuff since then to try and make people aware and work with people to educate people about not only their rights, especially for people who are employed. I'm a firm believer in unions. It's, the highest form of democracy is to have control over your economic life, especially in a capitalist society. I am, a big believer in personal liberties. I'm also a big believer in, from my economics background, a big believer in far more redistributive systems to help alleviate the obvious downsides of the current mode in which we practice capitalism, because a lot of the ways in which we currently practice capitalism are inherently self-destructive. Not only to capitalism itself, I actually love capitalism. I think capitalism is really good, as long as we don't constantly shit where we eat, which is basically what our current system does.
Yeah, really.
And so I mean that's my general background, and I also have degrees in history, and yeah, I'm thoroughly overeducated, basically on everything. I am the classic millennial of I'm just going to keep on learning stuff, and people will eventually pay me for that. That doesn't work. That's a lie. It's a
Among the unpaid advice that David will give me is oftentimes I'll say, "Can they do that? Why can they do that? Who can do that? Can I do that?"
And I normally have to
And
tell him that, yeah, they can do that.
usually, if it's "Can they do that?" he says yeah. And if I say, "Can I do that?" he's like, "Don't, please
no,
don't."
no, please, for the love of God,
but,
please don't, because I don't want to have to be there being like, because I can just
I told
imagine,
you so.
First of all, there's the I told you so, and then there's the I'm having to explain to someone else. Okay, Lucas is a very passionate person. I mean, I've already accepted one day I'm going to have to appear as a character witness.
Probably. So a lot of the times when that conversation goes into civic topics, government topics, history topics, and especially cops lately, there's a lot of great information that David will share with me, and then every time we talk about it recently, we come back to some similar topics. So we've decided to arrange ourselves down here in the Geek Cave and have a little discussion. We've got semi-distance. We've been in each other's like quarantine bubble since the very beginning.
Yeah.
David's one of the people that I was willing to kind of keep associating with measures in place, and I was already a little bit obsessive about like hand washing and shit, and he's got an at-risk person in his household for health,
Yeah.
so he takes really good care of himself. So that was an easy matchup. And then we're keeping our face coverings handy as a visual aid to remind you that if you're not sitting with a friend drinking and trying to keep some gap between the two of you, for your own good and the concern you have for each other and the whole of society, keep your mask on. So, cheers. Here's to day drinking discussion. We're going to
Cheers.
start off with the cops topic because David has some ideas that make a lot of sense, but I keep telling him save the best of it for the video. But basically, I argue on the internet with everybody like a lot of people do, and then I have people that tell me I'm wasting all of my time. And one of the topics that, of course, comes up right now is the whole defund the police and people that are too stupid to understand what that really means. And then, the disingenuousness of the usually right, usually white nationalist wing that really doesn't seem to care about tyranny from the cops. And I tend to find like all these little avenues of what if this works, what if this works, and David's got a pretty solid idea with Metro as an example. Nashville has a lot of things that we've done that are new or different that came along, and we were the pioneers. And he's got some pioneering ideas that are kind of interesting, and I've been trying to like not talk to him much about it so I can have genuine questions or reactions now that we're here. So go ahead and spill your concept because it's interesting and people should know.
So, I mean, basically, what the main problem that we have right now in America with the police is that there's two different ways of addressing law when you're trying to, approach it on the street, not in a courtroom. And the method that we keep on using today is what's called peace enforcement. Now, peace enforcement is great if you're the U.S. Army or if you're in the middle of a drug war, right? Now, if we are in 1987 South Central LA, Bloods and Crips are shooting at each other with AK-47s on a nightly basis. Peace enforcement is great because the problem is that peace enforcement is supposed to be there to create a zone in which peace can exist, right? In which you can have law and order. Because right now you don't have any law and order, right? And so the way peace enforcement looks to address law breaking is by compelling compliance. That means that if I see someone who I think is breaking the law, then I want to actively escalate the situation to force that person to comply with the law. I want to
Compelling.
Right. It's the compulsion part, right? I have every reason to believe that this person isn't going to engage in a meaningful way with the law and doesn't respect my authority. I mean, they're walking around with an AK-47. They're doing these things which are not helpful. to maintaining peace and order. And so what happens is that when you're in that situation, peace enforcement is a great system. The problem is right now, when I pull grandma over on the side of the road, grandma does not have an AK, right? We are not in the
She
middle.
might.
She might.
It might be next to her weed.
Right? God, I can just imagine.
Because Dare told me everybody who has weed is well armed.
I can imagine my dear departed grandma, little southern old lady, being like, "Hi, officer." It's just no. It's not. This is not what. This is not what is happening. This is not. This is not what works. Peace enforcement is great when you are in a high violence situation, and that's what our police are all performing right now, is peace enforcement. The opposite way, or not really the opposite, but the close cousin of peace enforcement is what's called peacekeeping. And peacekeeping is the act of de-escalation, right? I don't want to make things worse. We already have a situation in which law and order can exist. Our goal, therefore, becomes trying to maintain that law and order. And if you're doing something out of the norm, as long as you're not doing something overtly violent, right? That's an immediate threat to the rest of the community, then the goal has to be de-escalation. It has to be corrective action, but peacefully. And so the main problem that we have with police in America right now is that we keep on performing this act of peace enforcement. I'll give you a great example of peace enforcement in history. The Bosnian Wars, right? When we bombed Belgrade and Serbia and all these other places when I was a little kid, that's peace enforcement. The world community decided that the Serbs were a threat to peace.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
The beatings will continue until morale improves. And that out of that same event, there was this really cool thing that happened over on the sidelines called Operation Essential Harvest. And basically what happened was, over to the side of the Balkans, it's still in the Balkans, but over to the side of Bosnia and all this, Macedonia has a bunch of ethnic Albanians and a bunch of ethnic Macedons. One day we'll figure out exactly what that is. But they want to call themselves Macedons, and so therefore they're Macedons.
They're metal fans.
Yeah, right. And there was a lot of threat of conflict between the two. And what they said, what NATO did, is they said, I don't have time for this. I've already got this stuff going on in Kosovo. I'm trying to keep Bosnia from going to hell in a handbasket again. I need to promote peace. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show up and say, just hand me the guns. I'm not here to blow anything up. I'm not here to point any guns at anyone. That's not what we're here to do. I don't have time to do that. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take the guns and then we're going to leave. We're not here to stay. I have other problems to deal with Serbia. What we have right now is a bunch of cops wandering around acting like they're in the Bosnian Wars right now. That they're supposed to be bombing Serbia, basically.
Who've been culturally indoctrinated
Right.
to believe that they wake up every day in a state of war.
Exactly. It's this concept that they have to compel this compliance. And again, the opposite version of that is peacekeeping. And one of the cool things that we can do here right now in Metro Nashville is we can create that space. We can say, okay, here's peace enforcement.
I think Brian just showed up and has no idea why we're talking
Right?
about cops and Serbia.
You need to rewind, Brian. You need to
Don't
rewind.
rewind. Just stick with it. Watch it later. It makes perfect sense. By the way, there are other people watching. Feel free to chime in, and you can ask questions or heckle.
That's fair.
And
I probably deserve it.
a lot of you already watch us bullshit on Facebook in text form. This is just a video version of that. But there's an end result of this world tour. I've heard this part before.
Yeah,
it makes
I mean,
a lot of sense.
I'm giving you that part so you can see the difference between peacekeeping and peace enforcement. And so what Nashville has this great opportunity to do is we have 2 law enforcement agencies already present in the city. We have the Davidson County Sheriff's Department, and we have the Metro Nashville Police Department.
Give me a moment on the sheriff's department.
Oh,
okay,
good.
So my favorite thing about this county, I grew up in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County. I had 2 police forces involved, okay? and they had full power to do all the things. I don't know where they were divided. I don't know if there was any kind of official line or if Rutherford County could pull people over everywhere and Murfreesboro could only do it in Murfreesboro city limits. I don't know. I don't care. My impression as I have aged is Rutherford County is where all the dudes I used to go to high school with went to work in law enforcement, and Murfreesboro City is where they import cocky, jackbooted, piece of shit fucking guys that want to capitalize on the college population. So the good old boys work in the sheriff's department to mixed results, and the wannabe city cops that either respect themselves enough to make a real paycheck and not work for Metro, or they've come from somewhere else and they heard that Murfreesboro is a nice place to live, they tend to settle into that. And I view that as a ticket machine based on MTSU's population, because you got a lot of people in school, and there are two things that MTSU students are really good at: helping Murfreesboro get way more money than anybody ever deserves for rent, and getting tickets paid. Both of these things happen when mommy and daddy send money. And so nothing gets questioned. It's kind of just a mill. So I didn't really understand until I moved to Nashville the difference between the sheriff and Metro Police. Once I learned, I had so much fun because, as I've covered, talking about my street with our speed control effort, if I think you're speeding, you're definitely speeding because I'm a lead foot. But once I learned that our sheriff's department couldn't do anything but serve warrants and watch jails, I learned the joy that is blowing the doors off of a Davidson County Sheriff Cruiser. So you can literally...
And the park police. Don't forget the park police.
Well, the park police are Metro. They kind of have a thing.
They don't even have a ticket book.
I learned that they really don't like it if you brake test them, then flip them off when they pass you, then insinuate that they're not real cops. They really don't like that, but they couldn't do a damn thing about it when we had that conversation. And then I called to complain about the guy having an issue with it. And when I called, the person on the line was like, "You flipped him off?" I said, "Yes, as has been defended repeatedly by the Supreme Court of the United States." The point here isn't the fact that I flipped him off. The point is that your park cops are tailgating people when they drive between parks. But I learned in recent years the park police are actually the most pleasurable group to deal with. They're laid back, they're chilled, they have the keys to all the cool stuff, and they're half the price of regular Metro cops when you hire them for an event. They come with a cruiser included. Metro makes you pay for the car separately. Anyway, so the general idea being, we have these two redundant forces. There's a lot of details of Metro becoming a Metro and why there's different divisions. And originally I came charging into this topic, and one of these places that David corrected me was, "Get rid of the sheriff. Fuck it. It's stupid. It's redundant. Turn them all into Metro Police." He actually has kind of an opposite idea, which would be to kind of pull back Metro Police and give more things to the sheriff's department, right, because of the fact that they don't have the cultural hardwiring to be douchebags, which is the culture of police. They basically knock on doors, try to get people to show up to court. They watch jails, but they could add a lot of other peacekeeping things, or peacekeeping, not peace enforcement. And so that's where that kind of comes from, and we're in a unique situation to do it because we have made that separation. We're not like Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, where there's a weird overlap. Like you could get a speeding ticket from either of them, or if you're on the campus, all three. It's much more cut and dry right now, which gives much more room, I think, to your idea.
Right, and part of it is that especially one of the big points that police are always dealing with is mental health issues. And one of the great things that Davidson County Sheriff's Department is already very well familiar with is they have very strict protocols on, okay, someone's not playing with a full deck. We're a few sandwiches short of a picnic here, and
hold up, this one needs the special clothing.
Right, this one needs some help. This one needs some help, and we're equipped. When we have to be able to be equipped to do that, because even the sheriff's department recognizes that so much of the jail population, there's obvious mental issues. And so they've trained their people on how to deal with those in at least a semi-constructive manner to try and alleviate things, not just for them, but also for the people who they have in the jail. Because if they're just treating everyone like they're a lunatic all the time, then it just makes things worse. So the idea that I've been promoting is that we need basically peacekeepers and what I slightly pejoratively refer to as skullcrackers, right? The Metro Police, because of this warrior training, and I'm the saying that I keep on
Thin blue line.
the thin blue line, but the saying that
concept.
you keep on hearing them say is, "We are dogs protecting sheep from wolves," and it goes to that thinking of no, because the problem is you can't actually tell who's a wolf and who's a sheep, and the problem is bad dogs eat the sheep. And that's what you're doing.
That's
you're
true.
Eating the sheep.
That's very fair.
So what we need to start looking at is the idea that there's a place for Metro PD in law enforcement. If you have a hostage situation, I'd rather not have the sheriffs dealing with that. I'd rather have, again, pejoratively, the skullcrackers deal with a high violence, high crime situation. But if you're pulling someone over, if you've got a DUI, if you've got shoplifting, if you've got these minor crimes, having someone come in with the idea that I'm going to come in here to escalate and to fight, you're going to get a fight. You're going to have someone get hurt when there's no reason to have them get hurt.
Part of your thing is that traffic enforcement would be a sheriff thing.
Yeah.
Part of a peacekeeping thing.
Exactly.
And that sort of lines up with where I tend to be. So long ago, I subscribed to a theory that I definitely like. Basically, if you ever follow the trail of the history of speed limits, you will find that the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety is who got involved historically with creating speed limits as an arbitrary studied decision. Cops used to do a speed survey. They used to go out and figure out what's the average that most reasonable people think they can drive on this road. Okay, we'll put the speed limit here. Now, that's not scientific, but it's fucking honest. And they used to do it that way. And then along comes the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. The thing to remember about that is it has a really cuddly name, but it's a lobbyist organization for the assholes that charge you for insurance. So they have a vested interest. A lot of people like to say it's all about the money. They just want to make money off them speeding tickets. It's not about the city. Trust me, your city's never made up any kind of reasonable budget on your speeding ticket.
Ferguson actually did.
Well, okay, fine. But it takes a lot of shady shit that gets you in federal trouble in order to accomplish that.
Yeah.
It's not about them. It's about the statistics and the data that allow your insurance company to jack you for more money if you get tickets. It's not about safety, but they manage to brainwash the guys that already wake up in the morning thinking they're at war with the whole world into thinking that the only thing stopping you from killing yourself in your car is them saddling up to talk to you from behind those sunglasses about how fast you were going. Statistics are obvious. We have way too many people, way too many cars. It doesn't have that much to do with what happens on the road. More shit happens if they would divide the statistics by the disrepair of vehicles, the lack of training in the driver, the shitty road conditions, and all these other factors. Speed is a part of it. And I always ask, because I've got a graduate degree in defensive driving from all the times I've been to court. One of the first things I ask when they say, statistics show blah, 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 speed contributed to this many accidents. Do you have that data subdivided by how many people were drunk and speeding? Because they never fucking tell you that. Because they don't care and they don't know. Imagine when we say defund the police. If we put that enforcement in the hands of people that weren't looking to find their enemies and using this bullshit construct of the speed limit as the excuse to put their nose in the cloud of your weed or their eyeballs on whatever they think they see in your car, and instead take that peaceful approach.
Right.
So that's a piece of this that I really invested in when he started talking about. Now I don't know where it divides, and that's some of the stuff to talk about, but that's something I think really has a lot of teeth. And then on the other side, when you do get the skull crackers,
Yeah.
there's a lot to be discussed of what they need to own. And
Yeah.
we definitely, when we're saying defund the police, we're saying take away the fucking APCs and all these other ridiculous military surplus vehicles. That shit would be better in the hands of the rescue squad. Or give it to the Bloodmobile people. Wouldn't you much rather get on a really bitchin' decommissioned vehicle from the military to give blood than an old school bus? Come on. There's so many ways the federal government could have cleaned that out. Only
your
through that
fantasies-
mentality.
Your fantasies right now are just
I know.
really...
Only through that mentality
I'm-
do we give them military
Wow.
equipment that they don't even know how to use.
But
Go
no, I was just gonna say, it isn't just about the. I mean, because a lot of these violent interactions that we are seeing with police are the result of innocuous interactions. A cop stops you on the street. A cop pulls you over, and that is where we're seeing the challenges with regards to policing. And so the idea is Metro Davidson County has this opportunity to do something wildly different, which is we have two law enforcement agencies. I can take Metro Nashville Police and say, all right, you're going to be in charge of, if we've got a high crime area, if we've got someplace where we need someone, we need people to, again, use that peace enforcement strategy as opposed to peacekeeping. That's what we're going to look to do. For the majority of the city, however, day in, day out, what we need is peacekeeping. And what we can do is we can look at the Davidson County Sheriffs and say, since you don't have a warrior culture, since you don't have this idea that you're going to go break down doors, your job is to go find the criminals and punish them. You're there to keep the peace. You've been drinking too much, but maybe you're going below the speed limit. They pull you over and be like, you know what? I'm going to give you a ticket, and then I'm going to call you a cab, and I'm going to send you home, and I'm going to tow your car, right? But I'm not sending you to jail. There's no bail involved. You shoplifted. I'm going to drag you back into the store. I'm going to have you sit down and work this out with the manager, the owner, whoever. I'm not going to... It's not my job to take you to jail. And in an ideal world, I would like to see a scenario in which the Davidson County Sheriffs are almost never taking someone to jail. It should be a really big thing of like, oh, God, I've got to get my handcuffs out. I haven't had to do this in weeks.
He had painted himself with the blood of his victims. I had to apprehend.
Right? And there's strategies that we can look at for because people always ask, but what if things get violent? And there's strategies that we can look at and develop and evolve to allow peacekeepers to have a peace enforcement capacity if necessary. But part of the goal has to be, again, creating that line, that separation between peacekeeping and peace enforcement. And one of the reasons I support using this method and using it for Nashville is, since we already have these two law enforcement agencies, I can very easily separate them, right? I can pull them apart. I can let the guys who want to do peace enforcement, Metro Nashville Police, I can let them continue to do peace enforcement the way that they want, but I can contain it, right? I can use it in a different manner to, instead of using it as like, the Black & Decker, I put the can under and it opens it, and the bottle, and it also has a jar opener, and if I press this button, it dispenses me heroin. And I mean, we've been using it. We've been using MNPD, which is what defund is all about.
You mentioned the people that say, "What if it gets violent?" The very reasoning for that is partly alleviated by the idea of taking that mentality to a different place.
Right.
Because usually it gets violent for one of two reasons. The person, three. I'll give some percentage to the hardened criminal
going to tell you it's one.
that's already thugging hard and thinks they're against the world and they're not going to stop for any cops. But that's very, very small minority. I think you have the other end of the equation where people feel harassed. They feel like, and of course we've proven it over and over again, and there are studies that are very well known now about driving while black in Nashville, and the cops and our corrupt FOP, which is pretty much a blanket description of every FOP. They don't want to acknowledge that. Hashtag Fire Chief Anderson. But basically, the harassment factor tends to set things off on the wrong foot, or the cultural belief that the person is some kind of violent problem.
There was one reason. There was only one reason why this happens. And because, again, we can look at the difference between peacekeeping and peace enforcement, and there is a regular pattern, which is first you have the engagement, right? So, cop pulls you over, cop stops you in the street. Any one of these things, we have the engagement. In peace enforcement, the next step in engagement is always escalation. I want to escalate as a path to compelling my target to a particular course of action or a particular behavior. Peacekeeping explicitly says do the opposite.
Right.
De-escalate. We have to pull back from escalation because my goal is not to compel compliance.
Right.
My goal is to encourage compliance.
And we find ourselves now in this bullshit culture where people are talking about de-escalation training and all this stuff, which is really just a band-aid.
Yeah.
On a, it's like trying to tape together a mirror and still use it. It's already broken. You can put tape on it, but it's still fucked. You're still going to look like a Picasso.
Well,
it doesn't make anything work because the brainwashing is so deep. I mean, hell, what was it 2 years ago that Metro kicked that racist training manual out of their curriculum? I mean, it's already too deep.
It's taking an AR-15 and painting it pastels. That's what de-escalation training for most.
That's a different video. We don't have time for the gun topic, David.
No, I mean, but that's for most de-escalation training that you see in police departments is essentially taking the AR-15 and painting it pastels, as opposed to why do you need the AR-15 unless we're in a war zone? Which we aren't. I mean, because and again, like that goes back to the equipment thing that you were talking about earlier, which it shocks and awes me, and to say we are not in a war zone. Could something break out? Yes. And do I want you available if that happens?
Yeah. Right.
Yes. But the question is, do I need you on the street, prepped and ready, every day, with a tank? And So I mean, we're not going to go into this, like I said, but I absolutely loathe and despise guns. And when you truly loathe and despise a person, say for instance, then you completely ignore and forget their existence because it's just not worth your time. When you hate a thing, you learn everything about it. You learn every last thing about it. And so, all sorts of assault weapons, I can tell you, I can disassemble them, I can look at them, I can identify the calibers, I can tell you the history of the bullets. There's police. One of the things that shocked me was one of the first mass uses of the P90 personal defense weapon, a weapon that NATO developed. Was a tiny know-nothing sheriff's department in Texas, and they issued one to every patrol car. They did. They had like 12 patrol cars, and they made sure every patrol car had a P90 and 6 mags.
Every time I bring that up to somebody, they say, "Oh, but they're trained," and like,
hell they are.
I'm sorry, I don't have any faith in these cops, coast to coast, being trained for any of the military equipment when our very culture, society, systems, etc. barely fucking train regular people to have the guns that they buy. So I don't trust that to be very thorough at all. And changing the format takes that out of it. It's really interesting that in the past 24 hours, not even 24 hours, I've had 2 interactions with cops that I would consider positive. And for me to consider a cop interaction positive is a fucking miracle. So
For him?
usually I have to initiate the contact. That's rule number one. Actually, it should be rule number one for everybody. If you don't initiate the contact with a cop, assume an adversarial aim because that's what they're taught to do.
Yeah,
So if I don't
he's
ask
giving you
for
some
the
decent
conversation, I don't want to fucking talk to you. If a cop shows up at my door, the security door stays locked and closed, and they can talk through the glass if I didn't call them. Last night, I managed to create a spectacular crash sequence on our street with the barricade of construction stuff. He wants me to quit incriminating myself. So these fucking idiots
consigliere time.
took all the stuff from the construction zone with them. All right. So I called the cops to file a report, and I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. After these fuckers went through it one time when they moved everything coming down our closed street, I just want to get them in trouble. I just want to teach them a lesson. So I want them to perhaps get investigated.
You realize you sound a little bit like a Karen right now, right?
Yes, I do. But
just checking. I mean, it's just wanted to make sure that you.
The reality, though, is that I didn't know what color the driver was. It was just a car.
It doesn't matter about the color. You
But
just
Karen
sound a little bit like a
specifically acts against black people. I posted a video.
A Karen
I
specifically
posted a
acts
video.
against humanity.
Yeah, I posted a video earlier. You need to watch it. It has a lot of people talking about the cultural significance that a Karen isn't just the person that wants to see the manager. The Karen is the person who bases their entire action on their white privilege and female status and age. So anyway, rewind. I called this cop. He pulls up outside. I go outside to meet him because I have summoned this conversation. I didn't have this show up against my wishes. So I go out and talk to this guy, African American cop. He's been working in Nashville for forever. We know a lot of the same people. We had some good conversation. We talked about how we don't understand why people can't just avoid a street that's closed and a lot of little things. And I made the point to him, I said, I've been trying to make it through, like, as much of my life as possible, but especially right now, with a rule, I don't want to call the cops on a person of color, period. And I told him this, and he said, yeah, I get it. And he described to me how being a cop right now of color happens to be because he knows his community. And he said, back in the day, if we were chasing somebody, if we were running down the street, whatever, people would be on their porches going. And he said that neighborhood help has fallen off a cliff.
Yeah.
That everybody just sits there and refuses to help.
Damn straight.
And the reality is, you should be in a situation where you feel like you understand what's right and wrong, and if they're chasing somebody, it's probably for a good reason, and you would want to be like, hey, they're over there. But nowadays, you're like, I don't know what they want. That guy probably, took a cigarello out of a store display and got in an argument with a cranky cross-cultural market owner in an existing racial tension between their two ancestral roots. And maybe we don't understand everything. We shouldn't fucking shoot him in the back, Ferguson. But I'm not going to help him. And that's unfortunate because this guy seemed like he was a pretty good guy. And maybe he could use the community engagement, but he's in this trap. Now, this morning I had a different conversation on the phone. I reported basically a business has put up a customized parking sign that says parking for them only, but it's inside a no parking zone that's already got signs that are official from Metro. It's fucking mind-blowing. So I reported it, and it somehow made its way to the police department, which doesn't make any sense. So the guy that called from the police department, he said, look, it's not our thing. I don't know why we got routed. And I said, well, what's going on is they put up their custom sign, and it's inside no parking zone. And then he was like, oh, really? Well, I don't know. I might just go talk to the business owner about how that's messed up. And I was like, that's actually kind of funny. But earlier in that conversation, I told him, you getting the ticket from Metro's hub ticket system, you getting the ticket for essentially a sign enforcement signage issue where basically Public Works should just go with a screwdriver and take their stupid-ass sign off, throw it in the trash, and then tell them that they're not allowed to do that. End of story. And I told the guy, I said, when people like me say defund the police, we're talking about not sending you stupid work orders about signage. And he's on the other end of the phone, he goes, thank you! So what's funny is there's people that want it. inside law enforcement, they know that they're dealing with horse shit.
Yep.
That's a waste of their time. And your ideas about this potential division have the opportunity to address that.
Yeah.
And then while we're at it, we could address other stuff like the fact that our white police chief is paid almost twice what our black fire chief is making. And maybe not have the pay disparity and pay our cops, which would be sheriffs,
Yeah.
a living wage that's respectable for what they do. Because you can't fire bad cops if you can't afford to pay good cops. They all go work in Franklin. Why would you want to get shot at in Nashville for 35 when you could work in Franklin and watch the fucking mall for 55?
This is true. But I want to say one last thing on a nicety of that division before we need to move on to schools, because I'm looking at the time. Is there's something to be said to have the head of sort of the more aggressive division be appointed, but the head of the people who are supposed to be interacting with you day in, day out be elected, right? The sheriff is an elected position. And I feel like that's a good way to do this. And to say, all right, if we give the sheriffs more input, more authority, more ability, and say we're going to put more sheriffs out in the street, and they're going to be doing the day-to-day work from now on, we are going to be able to have a regular checkup with the person who's in charge of that, because we go to the polling station and we say, you know what, Sheriff Hall, you're doing an okay job, we'll keep you in. Or we look at Sheriff Hall and say, you know what, I literally have taken dumps that smell better than you. Go to hell.
And I have been on both sides of that wavelength. I waffle on him more than anybody else, but the culpability that they have to display if they're in an elected position, there's a lot to be said for that.
I mean, and Anderson, and that I feel like that's part of the problem with Anderson. I feel like that's part of the problem with having an appointed only system, and to have this bifurcated system, to have this system in which we're dealing with both, and in different ways, and in ways that are appropriate to each side, and to say, okay, we're going to have the people that we should be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I was speeding, or I see you driving down my street, and I'm watching you as a citizen. I'm watching you, law enforcement, do law enforcement things, and I now have the ability to say, you know what, I want you to behave differently, and I can help promote that by saying, I'll run for sheriff, or I'll support someone else who's going to change how you're doing that, and vote them in as sheriff.
Well, and the worst part of this is these appointed chiefs nationwide, not just Nashville. But these appointed chiefs, the people who appointed them forget they're the boss all the time.
Well, in a lot of ways, they aren't.
Well, that's true, but whether that's the mayor or the council at large, or not at large, like the office, but like the whole council, whatever the entity is that is elected by the people that makes that decision, they are so far removed from the ability to influence and give orders, and it drives me crazy, because I want a real top-down, real like commander-in-chief style situation. To me, every mayor in America should be the commander-in-chief of their military branch. And I was trying to research this, as you know, before we went on. There's something is in the works in Nashville to eliminate this, and I say bullshit because of the top, this bullshit set of protections we have for public servants. It's supposed to protect backbiting and unfair treatment and political enemies, but when you have a chief of police that you can barely fire, you really can't fire, you can only ask for resignation, which is fucking bullshit, and you have other heads of departments. I famously detest the head of the Music City Center, and they're not even culpable for their actions to elected officials. They're hired by a board that is appointed by the mayor, I think, and on a staggering term, so not one mayor can stack the deck. But the problem is the chief executive can't give orders to basically anybody. which is fucking dysfunctional as fuck. So if we're gonna have that problem, let's eliminate those people. And I like the direct accountability to the people. And you can't make the argument that it doesn't work because almost every county around Nashville does it, and a shit ton of judges are elected. So the conflict doesn't exist. And if it does exist, we need to rethink all these elected positions.
Well, and I also want to say this. I mean, and it isn't entirely Anderson's fault because it turns out that in many cases, even these police chiefs are powerless to do anything beneath them. And you know, we've kind of hit a
Because
time
the
thing.
FOP.
Well, you whoa.
That's a whole separate.
Oh!
That's a whole separate.
Oh!
The FOP
That's all I have for the FOP.
ensures
We have to do a whole other
all
segment
the
just
worst.
on the FOP because, again, as I said at the beginning, I'm a huge pro-union guy. I am big about, you know, workers should have a say in their economic future and their economic lives, and the FOP is a union, except it's the worst example.
It's not really a union.
It
It's
is
kind of a gang.
No,
It's almost more like a
it-
mafia of sorts.
It is a union, but I mean, it's the worst example of a union. I mean, every working person should look at the FOP as being the antithesis of what collective bargaining should be
I mean,
about.
in reality, it's just a lobby club to ensure violence culture. It's really not doing anything for workers. If they were doing anything for workers, cops would make more fucking money.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get real. If they were doing anything for the workforce, but they're not. They're only there to promote the culture of violence and whatever roots that it has. And those roots can be as sinister as you want to go.
Here's the thing. I'm not going to say it's a culture of violence. I will say this. It is a culture of unaccountability. That I think is more direct. It's not a cult. I mean, we should not, with the warrior training and everything else that we're seeing in these police departments. Is there an inherent aspect of violence? Yes. Should we be ascribing policing to violence itself? I don't believe that's appropriate. On the whole, I think it's definitely there. It's really there. It's definitely a significant part of it. But you know, the FOP is but.
So,
Quick
summary.
We promised to we promised
we are
to
going to
talk about schools.
We're not limited to an hour, but quick summary. I like to talk about Lucastopia all the time. It's the land in which all the things that I want are happening in civics.
It's a dark, dark place.
No, it's not. It's bright and filled with smartassery.
Oh,
But in
so
Davidtopia,
dark.
where we have reformatted and we have the Davidson County Sheriff's Department doing the peacekeeping and the police department doing the police enforcing, let me speed round you on a few duties and see where you would put them. All right? Ready?
All right, go for it.
POTUS comes to town, needs an escort.
Sheriffs.
Oh, okay. I would put that on police just because they think everybody's an enemy, and that's what everybody wants to do when they escort the POTUS. But serving the warrants.
Sheriffs. Or bailiffs.
Slow down a little bit next time.
Sheriffs.
Okay. Special event, hireable, off-duty cops.
Sheriffs.
All right. Let's see. Legitimate drug raid with actual warrants and actual knocking.
Police.
Got it. Let's see. Let me think of something else. School resource officers.
Sheriffs.
Yep. That one was clear to me.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do they call it? Community policing.
Sheriffs.
Obviously. And I think what your cultural idea there is the community policing concept, which is lip service horse shit, essentially.
Well, because
but it becomes real in your scenario.
Because the aspect of escalation and violence has been removed from the equation. If you know that I'm not going to go back to my cruiser and pull out, class 2 body armor, a riot helmet, and a grenade launcher.
Detectives.
Okay.
That one was been one of your big ones. So where do detectives live?
This one does get a little bit trickier. So one of my big pet peeves is that police should not be investigating crime. Neither should the sheriffs. No, at no point in law enforcement should any of those people be investigating crime. And the reason is because right now law enforcement, they get tunnel vision. They get very quick tunnel vision about they want to solve the case and knock it down and hand off the evidence and have it be done. And so they hand it off to the district attorney for them to prosecute. And I don't think that's what should be happening. I think your first job out of law school, and I say this as someone who's graduated from law school, if you want to go into public service, a great example of your first job out of law school should be, I'm going to go work as a detective. Because the detectives don't belong to any law enforcement agency. They belong to the DA's office. They are the ones who are
in
going
Davidtopia.
In Davidtopia.
Not currently.
Not currently. In Davidtopia, they belong to they belong to the DA's office because what they're the ones who are going to have to prosecute it, right? DA. It should be that your first job when you get out of law school is to go investigate crimes, to understand how those crimes happen, look at the evidence, gather the evidence, make sure that you're doing everything above board because you have a law degree. You are an officer of the court, as well as being an investigator. And what you do is you hand off to a senior member of that DA's office the evidence. It also means that there's a lot of the hinky stuff that seems to happen with a lot of investigations. It seems that if you have to pass a model professional ethics exam and regularly have to keep that updated and are held to a different standard of ethics, where you can be hauled before the ethics board for being unethical in a way that law enforcement agencies have consistently shown issues with. I mean, what was it? It was last year. There had to be a whole thing in New York where the New York State Legislature had to pass a law to explain to the police, specifically the detectives in this instance, that they cannot have sex with someone in their custody. What the fuck? What the fuck? No, boys and girls. This should not be a thing.
I don't think I have time to know, but later, after this is over, I have to know the case that sparked that.
Yeah, but no, it was a thing.
It's the old adage.
They even thought she was underage.
Oh, God.
That was the stupid part.
There wouldn't be a
She
rule
wasn't
if nobody
underage,
did it.
but they thought she was underage.
So
Yes, that's the thing. Anyway.
I like the detective idea because it expands. See, for me, the only fail-safe, especially like in Nashville, the only fail-safe between corrupt cop shit and going to court for dumb corrupt cop shit is the DA. The DA is the only stopping point that can say, whoa. Like recently, when Chief Anderson and his cop thugs decided to try to frame two political activists for crimes they didn't commit, it was the DA who said, wait a minute. This is bullshit. Let them go. You got the wrong people. This is obvious to me. If they were empowered with the detectives, that would be even quicker, easier solution to checking that power.
The other thing it offers that I really appreciate in law enforcement is it offers a path to better use of the DA's office. Because one of the reasons I don't appreciate the DA's office these days, in a lot of ways, is because so many of them feel that in order to cooperate with the police department, the system has become the police are there to arrest you and send you to jail. The DAs are there to find you guilty. It doesn't matter what the evidence says. This is a pipeline. This is a standard maneuver. You've been arrested. Right. You are there for. I mean, the presumption of innocence. The DA is supposed to have a presumption of innocence. It's when they look at the evidence and they say, okay, we think you're guilty.
Well, first, they usually don't they have a level of evaluation whether or not a prosecution can even occur?
Right, yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
That's the fail-safe that we hope for.
Well,
this is a bullshit case. Let's not.
That's a different.
Do this.
The way you phrase that is a little different because whether or not a prosecution can occur, you need to going back to the police and saying you need to find more evidence. That's
Which
the other way to interpret that statement.
sounds gross already, because that's like, hey, you need to find me some more stuff to use against this person.
And we
that's
know
probably
and we
not
know
guilty.
that's happened. And the thing is, we know that's happened. And I feel like if the entire aspect, divorcing the investigation of crimes from the prosecution of crimes, would fundamentally produce a fairer result for everyone involved. If we were to say, you know what, you just graduated from law school, you want to, one day be an ADA or a public defender, here you go.
Or all the other things. I mean, you
Yeah.
can go all the way up the chain, right?
I mean, anything where you want to be a litigator. I never wanted to be a litigator. No, it's bad. No, I'll negotiate your contract. I'm not gonna litigate. But I mean, anything where you think you want to be a litigator, I feel like that would be a wonderful and a optimal way to work your way into that status, and to say, if you're talking to an ADA, you're talking to someone who has experience with investigations, who can look at that investigation and say, guys,
was it
I have
Foghorn?
bad news.
Was it Foghorn Leghorn? Calm down, son. You're embarrassing me.
Right? It's like, guys. All right.
Right.
I'm about to treat you all like 1Ls, and I, for one, will enjoy it. You will not.
So now you understand, if you interact with David about the law enforcement topic, why he will start on a rant about the sheriff versus the police and how to split that up. It's a beer refill time. If you're watching, you should probably be drinking, because we didn't start our day drinking until technically it was after 5, but it wasn't necessarily 5 o'clock on the whole planet. Well, I did start my day drinking out by the street, watching people sail across
I
the
started
fresh
earlier. I started
speed
before
bump.
5.
But it's 5 o'clock
I'm on
somewhere,
vacation.
and it was us, for those of you that were behind the timing. But I'm gonna do a beer refill, and if you're
Yes,
out
please.
there, say hello. And which one would you like?
I'll do another Hot Perfect.
Hot Perfect. We're drinking Yazoo today.
Yep. We are going for the traditional Nashville standby today, which is good thing.
It definitely fits the ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
And since we're talking about fixing stuff that is broke, it seems like a good transition.
Just Hot Perfect. It's just Yazoo Brewery.
We're thinking about some separate podcast action or video stuff, where the whole shtick would be a beer review while we banter. So
Shout out politics.
let's make that super appropriate and mix schools in with beer. And,
There we go.
we'll transition to that. So tomorrow,
I can actually say
Alexander-
I've been in Senate meetings where that exact thing has happened. We're all drinking and we're discussing school funding.
I happen to believe that as long as everybody's relatively under control, the best conversations are had with beer. Historically, I'm
You've
pretty
never been
sure.
in the U.S. Senate.
Well, that's probably true. I'm pretty sure some of the most important historic decisions and conversations have taken place over some.
The
level
entire founding of the
booze.
Republic, everyone was completely smashed.
There you go. That explains a few things.
Like,
Yes.
no joke.
That's
Have
what
you-
happens that earns you amendments.
Have you seen the liquor bill?
Amend that. That's what.
Have you seen the liquor bill for the Continental Congress?
No.
The liquor,
ought to be
the liquor
fascinating.
bill is something like, if you adjust it for inflation, they were basically drinking about $4,000 a day.
Wow. Damn.
Right?
That's like half the liquor bill from that non-socially distanced party that happened over the weekend and landed on Twitter. So speaking of schools, so probably the best gateway into this is two realities. One, we have a 13-year-old, it's in middle school, and I had no idea where to be. I was on the fence about this whole situation, because partly I wanted to say, you know what, the hell with it, let's just try it out, and then if anything's going on, we can put the brakes on, shut schools back down, but that's kind of nutty and unreliable. And I was going to just follow my other half. Like, I'm gonna let this be a mom decisions. She can tell me what we're doing. That way, I don't have to like try to make this logical choice. I'm gonna let mom stuff rule. But I was really grateful for Metro Schools for just saying, "Fuck it, we're gonna go 30 days remote." So tomorrow is the first day of school, the remote day. But as we are Nashville, we're affected by all the other counties around us, and we hear all of their stupid garbage in the news and through our friends, and then there are all the other school districts all over the country.
Yeah.
And my mother asked me on the phone recently, "What are you guys doing about school?" Which I know is a loaded grandma question that's going to get me into hot shit if I start to say anything less than, "I am going to hover over my child and protect them from everything until they're 85 years old," because that's what she's going to want. So I was able to explain the insulating preference for following the most gentle course of action. But I said to her, I don't know why the fuck we're going to school at all. I don't know why we're even messing with this. It's a ridiculous equation. It's gonna backfire. We've got these idiot bonehead districts in the adjacent counties that are gonna fuck it up for everybody. Some of them trying to charge ahead with in-person school. Some of them making it an either or. It's absolute chaos. But the one thing that those people don't really deal with as much as we do in Nashville is the school as a vehicle to social services. The school is sometimes the only place that a kid interacts with an adult that's not trying to beat the shit out of them. Sometimes it's the only place that they get to eat an actual meal. There are a lot of kids that are at risk of falling vastly behind if they don't get some level of education. So my whole answer to mom at the time was, I personally think we just should shut the shit down until 2021, open the schools as a community resource. Have distance, all that stuff, but only at-risk kids that need to have a maintenance refresher would go for essentially group tutoring. We keep teachers employed doing it. We keep feeding the kids that need it. We keep that ability to detect an abused child. All these important things that some of these Wilson County dumb fucks can't even imagine have to happen through the schools, because they still envision Little House on the Prairie, one-room schoolhouse with a school marm and everybody's there for the right reasons. Bootstrapping, hard-working, American exceptional fucking dog shit. So my answer would be, fuck it, shut it all down. K-12, shut it all down. It's not worth the risk. And of course, there's going to be a lot of people that want to deny science and argue and split hairs about masks and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, it's just not worth messing with. It's way too much chaos. But I know there's a lot of legal constructs that obligate us to follow this process, which brings us back to a lack of national leadership. If you had true national leadership and national vision, you could make a federal move to say, we're good. You're not going to lose your funding. We're not going to put the hammer down on you for not educating children like you're mandated to do so, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to put everything on hold.
It's a little bit more difficult than you imagine.
And I get that in Lucastopia.
Right.
It's going to be a little sparkly magic wand and it's all fine. But there's a lot that I would really have preferred to see from the very, very, very top. But we have the worst possible scenario. We have someone that's playing POTUS on television, and then we have fucking Betsy.
Well, I mean,
we have the worst possible scenario for doing anything right with the schools. But I'm curious what, like when I suggest things like that, you typically bring up like multiple legal pitfalls.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of legal pitfalls. And, like, first of all, I don't have kids. I would like them one day. No, but most
he
of
wants kids way more than any dude that's single that I've ever met.
It's kind of weird.
You're
It's
in the
kind of
dad
weird.
frame.
I am in a dad frame. Also,
so it makes you apply to this.
Also, somehow in my dating life, I apparently am hot for teacher. I mean, when I
so that's why you want the schools open,
right? No, wait, no, I don't want the schools. I want the schools closed. No, that's the opposite of how that works. No, so I am very concerned for the female employees of our school system because apparently they end up being concerned about me.
I have no idea where you were going.
I was hot for never mind.
Okay.
Jesus.
You talking about retroactively or now? Like, were you in high school hot for teacher?
No.
Or are you like driving through a school
No,
zone?
now apparently, like now
Driving through a school zone,
now
like-
that I've hit my 30s, like I'm like, why are all these women who I talk to like
Teachers.
teachers?
Okay.
I just
That
no.
is true. You've ended up involved with a lot of educators.
right. This is
Even
the
if they're
thing.
not like teachers, they're educators of some form. I
exactly.
hadn't really thought about that.
This is. I mean, I
My thing is,
didn't
nobody
think about
bothered to warn me that all the teachers were attractive. Like, no, it's not in the dad manual. They don't have a page in there that says, warning, first day of kindergarten, you will walk into the school and be like... And
right.
all of that aside, it drives me nuts that these are the underpaid, in a lot of cases, young, less experienced adults that are trying to make it. They're trying to make a career happen. We're going to put them in the situation of managing... They're already in a situation of managing a ridiculous social resource. Now we're going to put them in this situation, and I just don't see... And I'm going to out myself. I'm a school cynic. I don't... Ever since high school, I've been committed to the notion that 90% of adults don't need jack shit that happened in math after the 4th grade. I don't think most people need a lot of the shit we exact upon them. And if we even bothered to care about more than standardized test results, we might be able to have an actionable excuse for it.
They could have statistics and calculus and things like that. Well, okay, so
But it
so here's the thing.
depends. It depends on what they're going to do.
I come from this from
we
the exact opposite
overinflate
side.
the value of that.
I come-
However, it wouldn't kill anybody to take a break as long as we keep the kids that are at risk coming along for the ride. My kid, he can take a break. Whatever.
I come at this from the opposite side, which is again, I have way too much education.
True.
On everything and
Dropout, overly educated.
Right.
Eh.
See, I have lots of framed things on my wall with nice, pretty things.
College dropout
yeah.
after 5 years. Took all the the real shit I needed. I just didn't think I should have to take fucking biology since I worked at a science museum for my entire teenage years. I didn't drop out of high school.
Anyway, so my take on it is this. On one hand, I mean, there are the issues about, especially school nutrition, and we've been trying to address that, which is we've been offering, allowing people to pick up meals.
Pickups, there's bus delivery of food.
Yeah,
which is wild,
right?
Like,
and I think
I would
that
so be doing a side hustle on Grubhub if I was a bus driver. Like,
right? That's not a bad idea.
The pizza's here and it's
That's
in a
not a bad
bus.
But no, I think for the school system, first of all, I want to roll back real quick to something you said earlier about the federal government, and the problem is that the federal government has no control over education beyond funding, basically.
Right.
So you have to remember, like the interstate highway system, right?
But now aren't essentially the purse strings are leveraged to get out of state education systems what the
exactly
feds want.
It's always the purse strings.
So a truly bold measure could be, we're not going to have school, and if you insist on it, I'd hate for anything to happen to your funding if you try to open the schools.
And the problem is,
I mean, there's so many stronger ways we can handle.
No, but the problem is you end up with places like Louisiana, which basically are like, I have to cut the drinking age. Go to hell. Right, and they still got their money. So there's a lot of challenges with trying to control education from a top-down scenario, and I wish we could. I sincerely wish we could. I think there should be a push. Like for instance, I know a lot of people have issues with Common Core, and I get why. It seems wonky in other ways, but the thing that I really love about Common Core, about the idea of Common Core, is I can have a kid in Seattle and drop him down in Houston in the same school year, and have him pick up directly where he left off. And to me, that standardization, that uniformity, provides, especially from an economics perspective, provides a huge benefit, because now I can move with my kid.
I think that makes sense
to all sorts of places.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just, in verbatim, Common Core. It actually means what you just said, but where it plays out is me going into the Mr. Incredible routine. Math is math! And like trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Though when I recently bitched about that on Facebook, a friend of mine who is literally a NASA rocket scientist shot down my whole argument and defended Common Core math, and now I have to default to thinking that I'm wrong because
he is
I
most
mean,
of the time. But
I'm not gonna. I can't. Scott, you're probably right.
yeah,
But
Core math makes sense.
the big thing to me is K-12. To me, no one. If I say in short form, no one's going to die if they don't go to school. That's not true. They could get beaten to death by a relative. They could starve to death. There are real reasons in Nashville, especially, that we have a population that needs the services provided by the schools. But what I don't think we need to be doing is trying to figure out how to be normal by any stretch of the imagination. And I would have loved for Metro, at least, to have been bold enough to say, fuck this, we're going the whole semester remote. And all of us doing our side bets, we're all saying that's where it's going to be.
I mean, but I think what they're afraid. I mean, it's Nashville, Tennessee. Let's just be honest. What our entire life revolves around. We are besieged on all sides. Well, mainly from Franklin and Dixon, and occasionally from Mount Juliet. We are besieged by angry armed conservatives. We have to think about the fact that, will I have to go man a barricade tomorrow? This is a reality of being a Nashvilleian. I say this especially as a native.
And while not paying as many taxes and not contributing much to our economy, they sure do have opinions about how we should govern.
Damn straight. I mean, and we also understand that, hey, I'd like to build a new community center. Oh, wait, no. The state assembly is angry again and doesn't like us because we're a bunch of dirty liberals.
Well, now let me hit you on a different level. Not only do I go off on the whole, I don't understand why we're doing K-12 at all, because it wouldn't really kill anybody if we just focused on the kids in need and let the comfy white boys like my kids sit aside and wait for a minute.
I'm going to get you hold up.
Higher education is the next level, where you,
yeah,
Scrooge McDuck in gold is David in education. So we'll hit higher education next.
Well, let me stay with lower education real fast. Is because the only reason we didn't go to a full semester is because we're afraid of the state. That's the only reason we didn't do it. Is because Lee would come down from Olympus like a pissed off drunk. I probably pretended to be a goose and fucked a woman.
Your idea. Whoa, watch out.
I got it. We're good.
David almost lost the beer and the microphone.
Yeah.
So that visual just met with my hokey vision of our HVAC salesman governor.
Right.
In the most
instead of a lightning bolt, he's holding a Hoover.
Right. It's just,
and he's probably dressed in like half a gimp suit. It's just.
There are worse. There are worse governors. I keep having to tell myself there are worse.
We could have DeSantis. We could have.
Could be worse.
What's his name? El Duce out of Arizona. It could always be worse.
Salesman to the highest office in the state. Just recent memory includes the Democrats, providing a very well-educated, healthcare and business accomplished human being. And then the Republicans put up a guy that ran truck stops and an HVAC salesman sequentially. But
and ran the truck stops illegally too, it turned out.
Yeah.
That's just special. That's just all sorts of wonderful and special.
No, I forgot Sundquist.
No.
He was so unremarkable that I skipped.
No, you don't remember the riots?
Entirely past Sundquist.
You don't remember the tax riots?
Oh, I remember. I just don't remember what his claim to fame was before he was...
his claim to fame became, I'm going to close the state park because you don't agree with me.
Well, that's okay, because, then we ended up with, I'm just going to outsource everything in the state park because... Why should we create a job?
Right.
So
anyway, back to the point. But I want to come back to the K-12.
They're afraid of the state, and I understand that. Metro has to constantly struggle being afraid of the state, which I usually translate. In a lot of cases, I'm committed to the fact that this is true, that our leaders just don't have the balls to try to face the state. And if we did a little more standing up for it, it's the classic bully scenario, right? at the end of the day, we can talk about how great it is to try to resolve conflict or whatever. Sometimes the bully doesn't leave you alone until you deck the fucking bully, and we never
we have no
deck the
ability.
bully.
We have no ability to deck the bully. We
Well,
have
in
no
some
ability
cases,
to
we
deck
can
the
just
bully.
do shit whether they like it or not. Because in a lot of these situations, we're talking about physical objects.
Yeah,
Well, fuck you. I'm building it anyway. And by the time they take it through the court, it's built and it's concrete and it's there. Sorry.
That is
And there's,
a
you know,
legitimate, that is a legitimate strategy.
Let's do higher ed real quick.
Okay,
'Cause
higher
that's
ed.
your area of wallowing naked in the glory of degrees.
Right.
But
I mean,
my take on that is why the fuck
higher
do we
ed
care?
Higher ed can be. I'm going to be honest.
There are
higher
no
ed-
jobs. Why do we want to go to school this semester? There aren't any jobs. Who cares?
Because first of all,
or at the most,
the entire concept of student debt needs to be reformed. Number
right,
one,
but that's different.
But I mean, but the idea
if they do school for higher education, it should be like only people working on core bullshit, and only core bullshit is available.
No,
only remote.
The thing is, all of it should all be remote. And no, if you want to get a goddamn philosophy degree, go get a goddamn philosophy degree.
Yeah, that
If
one
you
doesn't have
want-
anything to do with available jobs. So you're right.
If you want to go get an engineering degree, if you want to go get your engineering doctorate, go do it. I mean, but the thing is, let's just be honest. Almost all of this can be done remote. Group projects, once you hit undergrad, are bullshit. They're
Chances
there for
are-
entertainment value, and so
You
the
can do
professor
all
doesn't
of
have
your
to
friends'
read
work.
that many papers.
You can pick up the slack for all the losers you got stuck with in the group project from anywhere in the world thanks to Microsoft Teams. I mean, and really, that's more
It's so true.
That's more realistic
It's so
training
true.
for the corporate world than anything else anyhow. Because you're still going to be making up the slack for some losers via Microsoft Teams.
true.
You might as well get used to it now. But I don't understand, and this is my perspective as a guy that went for 5 years and then dropped out when I decided that I was insulted that I work for Apple and someone wants me to take a basic computer science class for 1 quarter. So I shifted the bullshit aside. I went to work. I have a very low value, and in the trade of advertising, design, and marketing, I didn't necessarily need the same thing. You have to have a degree for the law field.
You have
There
to,
are
you
two
have to have
different
a
objectives
You have to have a
here.
Juris Doctorate, right? You have to
Two
have a
different
Juris
objectives at hand. But I feel like it's not unreasonable to say universally, if this economy is so shitty and so stalled and our unemployment is so jacked, why are we in a hurry to get into and finish school? Other than the financial issues, why even open a college right now? Because you're going to just be progressing towards something that's not going to be that fruitful anyway. We don't have jobs.
Okay, no, I mean, the problem... Okay, here's one of the things I want to say about being fruitful. I think a lot of the problem that has occurred with higher education, at least on the realm of economics, is this. The new economy was supposed to be one driven by education and the ability for people who have gone through a program, understand a way of thinking, and for them to work in that system.
Based on lies.
No, it wasn't based on lies, because, and this is the problem. It was correct when they said it. That was entirely 100% correct. No, it was entirely...
When did they say it?
At the beginning of the 90s, right? At the beginning of the 90s, when they were looking at this, it was entirely correct when they said it. What they didn't anticipate was this. They were going... But what they were looking at was a industrial skilled labor versus a more white-collar clerical world, right? That's what they were looking at when they told my generation, you need to go get more education. Keep on getting it. If you have some, get some more. And it's part of what they keep on telling other people. And what has happened is this, is corporate America, instead of saying, all right, we need to buy a higher quality product. One of the things my father spent a lot of his life doing was preaching this theory that he created called age quality migration. And it's all about how as a economy becomes more developed, the quality of goods and the skill necessary to produce and deliver those goods increases. And he was completely right. What he didn't understand was how ridiculously greedy those in power can be. And to say, you know what? If I can just dress it up I don't need to actually have higher quality. If I can just convince you that there's nothing better. What my father didn't understand when he put together his theory of age quality migration was that he could not accept how basic capitalism can become when it is given the opportunity to bombard you with with what basically amounts to an advertised mistruth of, oh, this is a quality product, when it's very obviously not. And when he saw companies doing it, he would chastise them. He would try and say, no, that's a bad idea. This is, I mean, he hated Taco Bell, not because of the food, but because he did one job for them. And when he was running his firm, and he did one job when he was running his econometrics firm, which is a whole other thing. But and he looked at the quality of the product they were producing and how they were presenting the product, and he said, "This is bullshit. This is crap meat. This is crap. This is literally. I think it was just like there's no difference between the meat that was in this taco and shit." Right?
I was raised almost vegetarian, and I would describe my diet as pollo pescatarian if I were to be a fucking hipster about it, right? Like I eat chicken and seafood, and or poultry and seafood, and the occasional reptile. I don't know where the fuck that falls, but having not been a red meat eater as a teenager when Taco Bell was a staple of our existence, for a variety of social reasons.
I wasn't allowed to eat Taco Bell until
I can assure
turned
you
18 and I
the
couldn't
presentation is still dog shit without the meat.
Well, but
A tostada and a bean burrito still look like ass no matter what. Now, the tostada was a little protected because it came in a little box, and it made me love tostadas. And then I learned what real tostadas were like by ordering them from an authentic restaurant. But I see what you're saying in an early '90s perspective, but I think the 10 years thereafter really broke that mythology. But there was still this chicken and egg fucking bullshit.
I would argue that it hasn't, because the thing is, we still need more education to do more of these jobs. And the thing is, when
corporate America lowered the bar to let people through the door of what they require, or raised the bar of what they. So my favorite example is Dell. We've had 20 years.
It's just I take people who are not equipped to do the job, and I tell them either you do the job or I fire you.
Yeah, but that's not the case, because Dell's my chief example.
Yeah.
Dell moved to Nashville 20 years ago. And I remember I was pretty fresh out of high school. Yeah. I was still in college, and I thought, oh, that's really great. Dell's bringing jobs. Dell was really, in my lifetime, the first major corporate sellout that Nashville made.
Yes.
The first, take this land that otherwise is bullshit no one wants, next to the airport. We seized it and destroyed all these neighborhoods, but we're never going to expand B&A, so it's just rotting. Here, take some. Right. So take some of it and build your Dell thing. And it's going to create jobs. And we're going to talk about the tax break as a trade-off. Jobs! Woo! Tax breaks! Woo! And I looked at it and thought, that's cool. Maybe even some people I'm in school with could work at Dell and put themselves through school.
Yep.
Then I looked at the basic jobs available at Dell. And to answer the fucking phone for customer service entry level or basic qualifying of sales incoming calls, they wanted an associate's degree at a minimum, which is horse shit. And it's never not been horseshit, because if you go forward, first of all, anybody in the early 2000s was raised with some knuckle-cracking grannies that taught them goddamn phone etiquette. So you didn't go to college to learn how to talk to people on the phone. You knew because your grandma damn well taught you how to talk on the phone. Now, your group that I like to pick on, the Millennial Club, okay, no one taught you how to answer the fucking phone, and we all know this. Now, there are cultural reasons that aren't really millennials' fault for this. But millennials have been through college, they're in the workforce, and they still don't know how to answer the fucking phone. There's never been an era where Dell was doing the right thing by requiring any kind of degree for their entry-level positions on my taxpayer dime.
I'm going to be honest. I think you
So I think corporate America
underestimate the
played a game.
stupidity of a lot of people, and I think that's why they look for that associate degree.
Maybe
you underestimate the stupidity of so.
there should be
To
another
understand
metric.
how many anti-maskers I have to deal
I
with,
get it.
and just like no,
But that anti-masker is probably capable of
No!
processing your tier 1 tech support request, aka reading the manual.
I doubt it.
We
doubt
proved it over the
I
years
doubt it.
because we gave all those jobs to people that don't even know our fucking language. So
Well, ironically, with a more developed education system than ours.
true, but then our corporation goes and employs them for beans and then makes them give us a fake name that we all know is bullshit, that's a vast disrespect to their culture and their humanity. But anyway, to me, there's a disingenuousness of the corporate world, I think, trying to
We've
help.
gotten so far off.
Oh, we're about to come full circle. I think the corporate world upped the ante on the requirements for degrees for bullshit jobs to benefit the financial world of these overpriced loans that you just referenced when we started talking about this. And they feed each other. Well, we're going to require, if you want to be a janitor, you have to have an associate's degree. Ooh, I can make a loan for that. And it's going to be predatory as fuck. And it's going to haunt this person for the next 59 years. And they just kept doing it.
No, actually, it just expires after 20. You realize that?
But you get what I'm saying. They want to imprison people in forever debt and forever interest. All the shit that us Bernie supporters have tried to
here's
fight.
the thing,
And I feel like it's just too coincidental that they would make these requirements for bullshit jobs really high.
okay.
But my bottom line being, since the bullshit jobs think they want degrees, and there aren't any bullshit jobs right now to speak of, I don't understand anybody being in a hurry to get back in school for the fall or to start college right now.
What they want when they're putting those things in is they want to see a certain level of just basic acumen and dedication to an idea, to work. And that and I understand
Not college.
I understand that. Well, from your perspective, it's not college. The thing is, I have definitely dealt with a number, like with all people of all walks. I mean, I've been an electrician. I have none of those required college degrees. Obviously, I have done construction. I've done maintenance. I have worked in restaurants. I have worked in law. I have worked in IT, all over the place. I've done all these things. And one of the things that I will say is that it's hit or miss with sometimes with people without degrees, whether or not they have the requisite experience to do what they're doing. And then the question gets asked, how do you work your way up to that experience? I think what a degree says is, I have gone through a program which has given me some level of requisite experience that I can be dropped into this job immediately. That's the point. Now, with
that description is fair, but I don't think that description is what's actually happening.
Well, no, and I also want to say this whole thing about the debt cycle thing. I always go back to Prisoner's Dilemma. And Prisoner's Dilemma is this game they teach you in political science, which is you have two guys that are both arrested for a crime. And if neither of them talks, neither of them goes to prison. If both of them talk, they both serve 5 years. If one of them talks and the other one doesn't, then the one that doesn't talk goes to prison for life. Every way you play Prisoner's Dilemma, everyone talks. Why? Because the consequence is the other guy won't talk and you get 5 years. Everyone always talks. So, there is no conspiracy between Dell and the banks.
I didn't say Dell, and I didn't say conspiracy. I feel like a lot of these things are organic. They just feed each other.
No. There's nothing.
Feed each other over time.
That's
because let's face it, 401ks and Dell's own finances are all tied up in the banks. The banks are all tied up in education loans.
Again, I will always teach you. I will always say to you, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. I understand that it feels like there's this complicated thing, but I'm telling you, dude, I've been up near the top No one there is thinking like that. They are not that bright.
So, well, believe me, I don't believe in a lot of plans. I believe in happenstance that ends up being a benefit to people, and they never question it, and they keep moving forward.
Well, they don't even know what
But
they don't even know what happened.
at the
They're
end of
just
the
like,
day, is it fair to say that you are you more down with going back to college school for the fall, or are you?
Here's the thing: is college?
Because to me, that's a hot demographic for spreading the fucking disease. And that should be the one that we don't allow.
There is nothing in any higher education class. I'm going to say this right now: law, in engineering, in medicine, with the exception of working on cadavers. That is something that you should probably be present for. But any lecture-based discipline, right? Even a hands-on discipline that you can do at home. There is no justification whatsoever
for
any of those people going back to any building together.
And right across the street from where we sit at TSU, they are intending, as I understand it, to come back to school in person in only a few weeks. It may be optional or something, but contrast that to Vanderbilt. They're doing all kinds of weird backflips to have distance while still having school that just don't make.
There should be no reason.
It seems like it's a lot of trouble and expense for
if you're someplace right now as a university or college student, stay there. Stay there.
Well, and what you say.
Don't be like those idiots in Panama City or wherever the hell else.
Yeah, that's the biggest reason why I don't think colleges
this finger
should
is
be
just
back.
moving around like a drunk.
At least in K-12,
assholes.
we have kids that we can sort of try to control and give orders to, even though we know that they're children and they're chaos on wheels. But in the college environment, you have all these fucking entitled, immortal people that don't think anything will ever happen to them, that also don't actually get sick, but they spread it like a motherfucker to granny. And so there's no reason to put these people back together so that they can just basically dare nature or double dog dare nature,
and the thing is,
or keg stand with viruses.
And that's one of the problems. Is like look at Dallas City schools. Right now, there are kids dying of COVID.
Well, that's the other thing. We don't know enough.
No,
and we're making decisions based on
every
partial
time we
ignorance.
look at this disease, we find something else that it's hitting. We already know that it, despite being a respiratory disease, that's the most obvious presentation. It's also a circulatory disease. It's hitting the heart.
There's all
it's
kinds
hitting
of
the
fallout.
blood vessels. We know it's a gastrointestinal
For all
disease.
me and
We
you know.
it's doing something to the small intestine. And then there's the big thing that always shocks me, that why is no one freaking out like a goddamn madman about this? It hits your brain. When you can't smell or taste something, no amount of your nose being super stuffy is ever going to make it so that you can't taste something.
Right.
There's only one place in your body where that goes away.
Oh, stop. It sounds like science, and we don't do
It's
that
up
in
here.
Trump's America.
That means this disease is hitting you in the head.
Well, and the worst part of it
in
is,
your central nervous system.
for all me and you know, we've had it. And for all me and you know, we've passed it to each other.
It's entirely possible, unfortunately.
For all we know, you or I could find out 25, 30, 40 years from now that something's going on in our body as we age that was triggered by our undiscovered, unknown COVID case, because we don't know enough, but we're willing to subject our kids to it. Well, I'm not, and a lot of people aren't.
Well, I mean,
and they're causing a throwdown about it. At Rutherford County, I've got relatives, I've got family that still are stuck in the Rutherford County bubble. And the most astounding thing to me, this is what happens when you stay where you grew up for the most part.
Yeah.
The current head administrator in Rutherford County, the director of schools, is Bill Spurlock. And I haven't yet unleashed on Bill Spurlock on social media.
God. Oh, now I see
But
where this is going again.
Ninth grade
this-
Lucas owes Bill Spurlock and will have his revenge.
Won't let it go. It's been
But
30 years now
Bill
for this guy?
Spurlock
30 years for him?
has been a moron since
grip.
the day I met him.
Death grip.
Oh, but you'll like this. Bill Spurlock got caught sending emails to staffers in Rutherford County telling them that you absolutely have to be wearing masks in any social media photography, posts, etc.,
Oh, yeah.
so that we can make sure that everybody thinks we're following the rules. So he's basically been caught
Yep.
with his dumb fuck pants down, telling people to present the ruse that Rutherford County has its shit together. And the latest buzz is that their medical reference that somebody brought up in a big meeting for not knowing for sure if it matters that we close for COVID, someone cited their chiropractor. Their chiro doesn't think masks are important, so they brought that to the school board meeting to talk about that. And let me tell you, I love my chiropractor, and I don't understand this witchy voodoo she does when she has me hold bottles full of shit and then pushes on my arm and tells me I'm allergic to things I've never heard of. But I trust her to fix my fucking back. But I'll tell you what, I'm not gonna listen to her about any advice that betrays the majority of credible medical documentation.
Any discipline that has demons and spiritual possession
Well,
being an aspect of
that's not every
diagnostic.
chiropractor. That's
not every chiropractor, but I'm just saying.
Mine's
If-
just a hippie that does a lot of like
if
body
you're a
shit.
profession and you're not a priest, if you're a priest, go ahead. Go ahead. You do the demon thing all day long. All right, fine, good for you. But if you are supposedly in a medical or scientific discipline, talking about unprovable things that you can't prove through experimentation and science, and trying to say that that's how people should do things from your perspective in a discipline with medical experimentation and science, right?
Is
Die in a fire.
hog shit. I was going hog shit. You went die in a fire. That whole shit show, though, that whole Rutherford County shit show is being presided over by Bill Spurlock, the same man, coach. You always know it's a fucking setup for stupidity when the coach is teaching science. You always know if a coach isn't teaching health, which is the closest thing that comes to anything they're exposed to, you know it's bullshit.
Yep.
Right? Most of the time. There's one guy that's an exception to that rule that I've ever encountered in my life. His name is Mark Saltalamacchia. He's a really fucking educated historian with a degree in history that happens to coach track. But hey, that's your in.
Coach Birchback.
It's an off sport. Track
Coach
isn't the
Birchback.
same as like baseball and
Excellent
football
English
and
teacher.
basketball, all that shit. The mainstream sports don't ever produce, in my experience, anybody that knows what they're talking about. So Lucas, being a science nerd, sat on the front row of his 9th grade physical science class and liked to doodle in his notes, and Bill fucking Spurlock made fun of Lucas for being artistic and doodling in his notes, which by modern education standards is like a huge no-no. You never make fun and back up bullying. But that moron moved up, kissed enough ass
Death grip.
to be
Death grip on this one.
installed as the head of the school
Well,
system
let
in
it go.
Rutherford County. So for all you guys in Rutherford County, I'm really sorry that you're dealing with that dumb fuck. But that's the kind of shit that he's presiding over. Emails, coaching people on faking it, and letting people actually say out loud that their chiropractor has a problem with masks. So I feel lucky in Nashville, but also not, because I don't like being incongruent with all the other counties, and we do all this stupid
We have
shit.
97 of them, dude. Get used to it.
Yeah, but we only have the adjacent counties that we try to kind of coordinate with. Like, we try to be on the same page when winter weather happens, because we know we have commuters that have to deal with all that stuff. We don't seem to give a shit about spring break timing. For some reason, in my entire lifetime, we've never bothered to, like, have anybody call somebody else to put most of Middle Tennessee on the same fucking spring break. But I think Florida likes it because they have sustained income. So I'm not in favor of anything going back at all, period. Sounds like you're good with remote only.
I mean,
But the bottom line is risking everybody in person
There's
is
just no-
fucking stupid.
there's no good way to do it. And honestly, like I've tried to game out scenarios where I'm like, okay, we can send a third of each school to their building every day. But the problem is, in order to sanitize everything, keep everyone safe, keep everyone social distance, you've just created a nightmare.
Yeah.
A complete nightmare of trying to keep things rational and sane.
Or you end up with boneheaded shit like, I forgot where I heard it. We'll just have the students wipe down their desks at the end of class. Really? Like, no educator.
Have you ever tried to get... I'm going to say this. So my mom's a kindergarten teacher. So my mom is a kindergarten teacher, and I have tried to help out a few times. And is these jokes, she's like, David's always like, David wants to be a dad, blah blah blah. I'm like, I kind of want to be like, I grew up, I a significant portion of my adulthood, part of it has been taking care of kids. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd like to try this, but I do understand a couple of fundamental things, which is trying to get kindergartners, or at least a whole classroom of them, to do something together is
Herding cats. If the cats were all aliens. I teach for 2 weeks most summers. There's been some interference in my work schedule and other things. So the last time I did it was 2 years ago. I did a half schedule, and then last year the class was canceled because there wasn't enough interest. But I teach in an arts academy for 2 weeks every summer, and this is something that's voluntary. The kids are there because they're interested in the arts, or their parents have decided it's the best way for them to spend their summer, whatever. When the dismissal happens, they are out of there. Think about when you were in school. When the bell rang, it didn't matter what the fuck was going on. No one's going to sanitize their desk on their way out of the class.
Well, I mean, it's not just about doing it on the way out of the class. It needs to be multiple times a day.
Right. And you're talking about a believable score of, like, a half point on a 10-point scale. My kid's generally a good kid, and we still assume that any conflict that comes up or any discrepancy in any story about school, he's got to be at least 50% lying. And you're going to depend on kids to help out. There's no scenario. There's no chiropractor making excuses for masks. There's no fake it till you make it on social media. There's no let the kids wipe shit down. The only thing we could possibly focus on is making sure that we don't shortchange the kids that are having a hard time, kids that are at risk. And then if you're doing at-home stuff and you can, like, invite a kid over whose mom and dad work or whatever, do that. Figure out a way to do that. Help each other. But this mind-blowingly stupid push, of course encouraged from the chief moron in the White House, to get people back to school it's everything. It's stupid, it's irresponsible, it's dangerous, it's unrealistic, it's all those things.
There's no good answer here to the entire situation. I mean, if you do entirely remote, then you're putting a lot of pressure on poor families. If you do,
it's pressure on regular
and regular families. If you do,
we're already
if you're doing everything where everyone's going to come in every day, then we've got a whole new problem about trying to keep everything sanitized, because we know kids are dying of this disease. We know teachers are dying of this disease. We know kids can spread the disease. And
what do you think the end game of this idiotic standoff is? Because I have an idea, but I want to hear yours.
I mean, I think we have to accept that a pandemic is a pandemic.
But what do you think is the trigger that? What do you think the breaking straw is?
For what?
When we finally say, you know what? Okay, never mind. Nobody's going back in person.
I think it's going to be when teachers and grandparents. I mean, or you'd like to think it's when teachers and grandparents start talking. I'm going to be honest. We were already past the breaking straw. It's just people trying to climb their way out of it and convince themselves that the straw isn't broken, or that the back of the camel isn't broken.
I personally think the workforce is going to collapse. I think that you're going to have, between standoffs with teachers' unions and mass exodus from the profession. We've seen a wave of teachers quit.
I mean, we've seen a wave of teachers quit. And I'll be honest. And again, this is another time. This is another live episode that we should do. But I mean, the thing that's going to break the camel's back is deflation.
Well, yeah, right.
Which is different. Monetary deflation is what's going to break.
But that's an overall cultural, societal thing. Yeah, that's not specifically schools.
Which we found out this week.
He's so thrilled that he's right about this idea.
I made this model 10 years ago, and it still works!
As long as they approve some kind of additional extra unemployment funding, then I will be on your side. But I won't be as happy about it as you are if they don't approve.
No, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. The only part I'm getting like a kick out of is I'm like, I told you so. This is one massive 10-year-old I told you so.
Just remember,
to the planet.
Just remember, we have like minds, and you have a big house. And when the shit hits the fan, your neighborhood has cul-de-sacs, and it's the barricade. I think we're gonna cut it. We're almost at 2 hours, an hour
Yeah.
and 43. But
Hour 45 is
a
a good
lot of
place to
people
cut
have
it.
kind of like come in and out, and that's
Yep.
cool. I'm glad to see that people did. And Brian left a bunch of comments. Puck the Folies is probably my favorite one of the day. Um, Brian, for those that do read these comments or do see me banter with him, he's an example to me of literal woke occurrence. Brian and I used to fight tooth and nail. I was a Clinton guy.
Me too.
I was a Clinton guy, and he was a Rush Limbaugh guy in the turn of the century, for those that understand the phrasing, late 90s, early 2000s. And he got kind of out of that game of rat race, and he started being a little bit more in touch with who he is. And he's got very respectable conservative touches, but the guy's genuinely independent. He's one of those people that I like to have around. And if you're even crazy and somebody I can't stand and don't agree with, we want to see you comment anytime. So feel free and stop in whenever we do one of these again. I think we'll do some more probably at some point. But
We
have
might-
a wonderful evening.
Bye.
Toodles. We're going to see what happens when we click the end button.
There we go. End the